fourth episode of All Elite Reviewing, the podcast where we talk about All Elite Wrestling and all its many shows and soon to be even many more shows. My name is Shamit Ghosh.
And I'm Josh Starnes.
And we're going to start this week with Elevation, as we usually do, considering that's the Monday show. And it's just very convenient that way. So in Elevation, the first thing they start off with is a Proud and Powerful promo. We haven't seen a lot of promos from these guys lately, but we're starting to see them talk a little bit more, which is, I think, good because I think their characters could use it. But I will say that I kind of do miss the goofy Ortiz rather than the serious Ortiz, just because he was so good at being kind of goofy in the ring. But we haven't seen that Ortiz in, months now. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Do you have anything on that, Josh?
It's telling, that with the current schedule with Dynamite on Friday, that the dark shows and Dynamite are happening so far apart that by the time I've watched Dynamite, I can't remember what happened on dark. So I entirely forgot about this until you just mentioned that that's what it was. It's just terrible.
Yeah, they tend to do that. It's almost like they have it's not repeating or redundant, but I think it's just meant to keep it fresh in the viewer's minds.
Well, it's the thing I like best about the dark shows is that when you watch them all, it does build all the storylines of everything. They talk about why is that on dark, why is it on Dynamite, and there's they have time limitations for everything you do, but it is to me the draw of watching the YouTube shows as well, as you get a fuller view of who all the characters, not just the people who aren't yet on Dynamite and seeing them early like Bear Country or something, but you get a fuller view of the main acts as well, especially on Elevation, where they are purposely putting the main card acts on a YouTube show, so they have time to pull out to pick up their storylines, because they can't do this. All the Proud and Powerful, anything Inner Circle on Dynamite is going to be all about the stuff at the Pinnacle. They're not gonna have time for this kind of promo on Dynamite, so this is the only place they're going to get to do it. But and when the shows go bam, 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 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then eventually Friday with Rampage, and you have 4 days in a row, stuff will be fresh. But when there's like a long break because of the playoffs, then it's easy to forget things and stuff piles up pretty quick. But this was a good promo. They mentioned something that I think people have mentioned, but we forget about it, and I forgot about it, that they have not had a world title match since February, almost 6 months ago. And that match was their first world title match a year and a half after they had joined the company. They had gotten up to the point of being like number one contenders, but not ever, but kept getting defeated just before the end. And they were always stuck in either long feuds as part of a longer group with the Elite, or long feuds as part of a larger group against the Pinnacle or something like that, even though they're meant to be one of the top tier, top of the card tag teams. And we talked a bit, it makes sense if they are in fact building up to something bigger, because we talked a bit before Double or Nothing that with the Young Bucks as heels, if Kingston and Moxley don't take the belts off of them, what other babyface tag team is possibly believable as being able to take it from them? Because we know it's not going to be Death Triangle. We know Jurassic Express is not up to that yet. Top Flight is injured and not up to that yet. SCU is no more. There really aren't a huge number of other babyface tag teams, and none of them are near that placement on the card except for Proud and Powerful. So, a Proud and Powerful versus Young Bucks match for the tag titles at All Out could be very interesting, and you could believe that Proud and Powerful could take it and could easily, run the division with it for a while. But that depends on whether or not they're continuing to be stuck with Pinnacle stuff. And it seems like
That's what I was going to say. I think they're kind of stuck right now with this feud. So, depending on the timing is very hard to figure out for them right now, because it really depends on how much legs does this feud have left anymore. And I guess they're going to ride it until they stop riding it, basically. That's what it seems like right now. So,
well, everything as we'll get to on Dynamite, it's still going, and it's breaking down into individual pieces. I don't know how many of those they'll do. Is this going to be the blow off? Each individual mono a mono is the blow off? Are we going to be going on to this deep into July? And if they do, All Out is first weekend of September this year, like Labor Day weekend. I think it's September 5th. That does not leave a lot of time to build to a Young Bucks Proud and Powerful title match, if that is even what they're thinking about. And who knows?
Right.
Who knows what they're thinking
Who
about?
knows? Yeah.
Sometimes they have really obvious, very clear. I mean, they could put Hangman Page with the Dark Order and 10, and now you have a new babyface team coming out of Dark. Who knows what they're going to do. Sometimes their direction is very clear, like long-term direction with Kenny Omega and Hangman Page is very clear. The long-term direction with like Moxley and Omega was very clear. You knew what was going to happen. It was just a matter of when it was going to happen. But then sometimes you're like, they've got like 3 or 4 potential directions. They seem to be heading in all of those all at once. Generally, they have their long-term plans laid out well in advance, and you're able to, if you're not able to look forward and go, this is definitely what they're doing, you're definitely able to look back and go, this is what they were doing, and these are the seeds they planted over like 24 months. But you can't always see it when you're in the middle of it. And right now, it makes sense, but they may have some other plan we just haven't figured out yet.
Yeah,
that's all right. They got to have themselves a really good squash.
Yeah, exactly. But that's like a lot of matches on Elevation Dark right now. Yeah. So speaking of that, actually, the next match was Jade versus Jade Cargill versus somebody who I did not miss at all.
Yeah, I did not miss.
Rushy Chanel. I don't think she's good at all. I don't think the gimmick is awful.
The gimmick is not good.
There's just nothing going on there. There's nothing.
And
she was basically fed to Jade, which is fine.
Yeah. Usually I give a lot of leeway to the goofier gimmicks that are there to be silly.
But that's just
this one's a bit, even for
it's like worse than the Mean Girl one. The Mean Girl one just feels very dated, but this is like worse than
yeah. Well, now she's even. I mean, this is the Mean Girl one seems to believe that. And I can get over it because I felt a little bit of that when Red Velvet first started appearing with her cake batter stirring thing, but she got better. And
she's great in the ring.
She's much better in the ring. She got a lot of ring presence. She started toning down some of that stuff in order to be less of a gimmick and more of a wrestler, whereas Ray Chanel is all gimmick, and she's about exactly as far up on the card as she needs to be. Is getting squashed by Nyla Rose and Jade Cargill.
So another thing I thought was Jade actually pulled off. She's pulling off really impressive moves in the ring. Like she had a really good press Samoan drop that I saw that was really. I thought she executed well. I mean, damn, that woman's strong, right?
Yeah.
And another thing is when you see her finisher, it finally dawned on me. I was like, where have I seen this move before? It's a glam slam. It's a
glam. It's a renamed glam slam.
Right.
But the way that she does it is
it's modified. It's more turn.
It's modified, but it doesn't quite come out of nowhere, but there's no signal for it. And some of that's just the way that she does it because she hasn't yet developed a signal for it. I think that's just part of building your character and building your total gimmick. And she's still working on that. So every time she hits it, for me, I don't see it coming and it comes out of nowhere. So she'll hit it and someone will go, it's the Jade. And I go, oh, the match is over. I mean, her match isn't long to begin with. It's like, oh, great. That's her finisher. This is over. I mean, her matches aren't long to begin with most of the time, but I'm always surprised. Right. She needs to not everybody needs this kind of thing, but she really needs to a signal that she can do, like Rock setting up for the People's Elbow or a Hangman before he does gets outside and has to set himself up and do a lot of show for before he does the buckshot lariat.
Well, the best thing I always thought was doing the finisher, doing a signature move into a finisher. Like for example, you said Rock, and that's a good one because before this People's Elbow, he set that up with a spine buster every time.
Right.
So that would be a good tell type of thing. Like, oh no, we're building up to it now. So I get that. I guess that's what you're really talking about. Some kind of natural progression to that.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. There's definitely some who do, the Bret Hart 5 moves of doom. So you always know this is going to lead to that, can lead to that, can lead to that. And some people, they do that, but they'll mix it with, you have the Brody Lee hand gesture before the discus lariat and various other things. Not every wrestler does it, but a lot of people have something a stop that they will do before they're going to do their finisher, unless their finisher is meant to be something out of nowhere, like the RKO. But but the Jaded is not that. I don't think it is meant to be a somewhere out of nowhere. It's just that she's not doing anything that signals to, a double underhook from behind. That's pretty tough to do out of nowhere. Yeah, exactly. and yet somehow it happened because she's so strong. So far she's done it very quickly and very smoothly. You know, most people, you notice, they spend some time getting their double underhook because they want to make sure they don't drop anybody or dislocate their shoulders.
Sounds like they're placing their arms in each other.
Yeah. Whereas she just like right, like nothing. You know, so there's nothing to, she's like done with, and then she does the move so fast. So she's done with the move before you've even realized that she's done the move, and then sat there and flexed and like, oh, okay, this is the thing. So yeah, maybe it needs like a setup that everybody recognizes and a flow of everything into a finish. But you know, that comes with time. That's why she's getting some done. But
I mean, if she used a press Samoan drop she did and turned that into it, I think that'd be good. I mean, that's a heck of a move. So
yeah, I have no doubt that her like ring stuff is going to come along faster than anything else, because she's, you know, from all accounts, she's like an incredibly gifted natural athlete, and you can tell just with the limited experience she's had. Each match is already getting better than the one before it, even just the squashes. But you know, so next she just needs like the character stuff, which is coming. I think she gets a bit more. I get too much of criticism for her promos. I mean, they're not great, but they're not awful. And especially considering how much time she's had, they're better than they probably should be.
I mean, if you consider where she started, I mean, anything's better than that.
Well, that's true.
Her first promo was so awful. But I think the only thing I wish she would expand her material a little bit. I'm getting a little tired of her catchphrase already. Where I'm like, I feel like it's the only thing she says these days now. So
well, they seem to the point where they're making jokes about
and
that.
It's a generic catchphrase to begin with.
Just
saying I'm that bitch. It's just saying like, oh, I'm the badass or something like that, which is like, it's a catchphrase, but
well, it doesn't come out like organic. I mean, there's nothing wrong. Like, I mean, The Rock, if you go back and listen to some old Rock promos, he can do a lot of stuff on the top of his head, but most of the time he's just a catchphrase machine. He had a bunch of them, you know, so he might have 5 or 6. But, you know, a lot of his promos would just be him getting through all 5 or 6 of his catchphrases all in a row, and that would be it. But it worked. He could make that work. Now, some of it's in delivery, but some of it's also in like how organic she is. Like her ending on her catchphrase every time isn't so bad, but she just needs an organic way to get there. So
or like, just more to say before that.
She can, it's like, well, she can say her catchphrase really well, but not necessarily anything around it. So it doesn't, it's it's a little disconnected and it doesn't flow yet. But then that comes with time too. It's really hard.
Right, exactly.
I mean, she's doing that. She is doing that in front of like 1 million people every week on live TV. That's very difficult, and she's doing it. So we're giving her maybe more grief than she really deserved, relative to both her experience level and what she's actually doing.
I don't know. I was in public speaking and debate when I was in high school. I never sounded like her, ever. Like when her first promo, I never, like, I don't even think it was a kid I was sounded like.
I don't want to be, it's almost like beating a dead horse, but it felt like that her first promo on TV was her first promo. And that takes some guts on everybody's level, not hers to go out and do it, whoever sent her out to do it. The decision to have her go out and do it. She's definitely getting better. She's getting better. She plays off Mark well. She needs more than one.
That's good. That's the point I had. Is I like that they finally basically went with the storyline that this is her manager, or not her manager. This is a lawyer, not her manager, their partner. But the guy, he's a good actor. He does his part well.
Well, they have, you know, they've gotten a lot of criticism for, they have not just so many stables, but so many managers. Do they need?
He needs managers. He absolutely.
And there's like some cases where that's true. Like Nyla Rose doesn't really need Vicky Guerrero. Her promos are fine. I don't know why they're letting, except just to find something for Vicky to do. But Jade is not in that. It definitely benefits from having someone who does a lot better talking and can get there and do all that. So then she can just do her catchphrase and it works. It will limit her if that's all she ever does. She needs to be with she needs to be able to talk on her own to some extent, and she can, and she's getting better. Like not everybody needs to be the best promo guy, and you can stay at the top.
But I mean, it's passable.
But you know,
and just don't sound stupid.
Yeah, and don't sound like you're a robot or something. But she's
getting
better.
The next segment after that one, we're Proud and Powerful, which I guess is why they had their promo, was against Liam Grade and Adrian Alanis. Which every time I hear Adrian Alanis, I keep thinking of Alanis Morissette songs.
I know,
even though he's
coming out to that.
Honest on them, so like you ought to know, right?
We had, I know.
But here's my question.
Yeah.
Here's my question on this one: Are because Proud and Powerful, they were talking about how they're the tag team to come up.
Right.
And so does that mean Les Sex Gods? Is that done?
I think so. I think that
At least on a
I
regular
think we
basis.
will.
Might be just a
Well, I
once in
don't
a
think
while.
they're going to. I think it'll be once. I don't think they're going to be doing the tag team thing and running up the ranks. I think you will probably see them tag team, but probably not like it was before. I think part of that got blown up with the whole MJF, Chris Jericho storyline, but also it feels like that what they want to do is move Sammy, which they should be doing, move Sammy into like a main event status and get Jericho to help move Sammy into a main event single status rather than just we be tag team stuff all the time. And you know, and it fits what they've set up where everybody else in the inner circle is a singles guy to one degree or another, and then they have one tag team, and it works.
And you know what else I like? Something that I've noticed in these last couple of episodes, because we've been watching until the last few weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been really crowds at these shows. I mean, it's just been like the wrestlers themselves and their families by the ringside.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like, it's almost like playing a game of like, hey, who's actually over? Like, because, you know, like, I'm like, oh, the crowd's reacting. Like, that's when I figured out that Jungle Boy was like supremely over. I was like, wow, because I like him, but I don't like him as
when
much
they
as like
do these things.
People,
yeah, like not just a taping, but like, you know, the ones they're able to do right before a show. Now they have crowds, and yeah, that's when you can tell you're like, oh, okay, Jungle Boy's dead. It's not just a guess. Jungle Boy's definitely over. Darby Allin's definitely over.
Mm-hmm.
Varsity Blondes, they've got some fans.
I don't get it, but yeah, they're over. Yeah,
I will. I won't be surprised to see the Wingmen show up into that. You know, at some point where they're going to come out and they're going to get like the weird applause like best friends do, and like and fans who don't get it will just go like, I don't get it. Why are so many people liking them? But let's see.
There was a very funny, I like the Dark Order segment where they talked about Danny Limelight, mainly because I'm not that big of a Danny Limelight fan to begin with, but like
he's very good on New Japan Strong. He's
it's the radioactive poppy thing. I hate that. I think it's dumb. I think like either you're Spider-Man or you're not, and he has a Spider-Man tattoo, so it's fine. But then calling yourself the radioactive poppy just seems dumb to me. But they did have very funny, and the thing I love because they all start doing chops on each other, right?
Yeah.
And then Alex Reynolds like, I don't want to be Danny Limelight. So I was like, yeah, none of us.
No, but none of us do. But you know what? That led us into the Danny Limelight Evil Uno match, and Evil Uno got several good because this was leading up to his match on Dynamite, so he got several showcase matches on Dark and Dark Elevation, which is worth it because you never get to see him do single stuff, and he's very entertaining. He's good. He's not like one of the best guys they have, but he's good at what he does. But he's very entertaining. He's got that act down. Like
his spots are good as everything. His mannerisms are great. Like there were two spots in that match that I really loved. Right, there was one where Limelight went to the top rope, and Uno's standing right there, and Limelight doesn't move. And
I think he was selling. Like he'd been hit by a hit, and he was going to, and so he was an easy target. And then as soon as Limelight comes off the top rope, he just steps forward.
He just slowly walked out of the way. Yes. It's like nothing dramatic. He just walked out of the way and pointed to his head.
Like it was nothing.
The spot I liked better was when Danny went to kick him and he spun the leg into the referee and had the referee hold, and the referee of course holds his leg because that doesn't want to get kicked, right?
Yeah.
And then he does the cutter on him there. I thought that was great.
They do that a lot
in the referee.
They do that a lot in Dark Order, and Evil Uno and Stu Grayson tag matches, but it's always good. I mean, it's one of his bits, like along with the cannonball off the apron, but
stomping on the hands.
Yeah, but I always pop for it, so you know it works well. I
love watching Uno and Stu wrestle. I mean, I think they're both great, and I think they work really good as a tag team, and they've been a tag team forever. But even individually, like those guys are really good. I prefer the tag team.
It's like Stu's individual matches. The only thing with Stu, I think he's a little bit better as a heel. He's like the one outlier in modern Dark Order because everybody else totally works as a goofy baby face, but Stu Grayson. I don't know. I just remember there was this match he had last year, a year and a half ago with Christopher Daniels that was just where he was just being the complete dominant heel all the time. It was fantastic. And I like seeing that. I wish they could do more of those.
He wrestles like a guy that's 10 times bigger. That's what I always say about Stu.
And he's strong like a guy who's 10 times bigger. I mean, didn't he pick up like one of the Bear Country guys in promotions? He's short, and it's a lot of muscle, but it's not so much that he's heavy. Because I think he's only like 195 pounds or something.
No, he's lean. He's very lean.
But he has picked up because you know his his finisher is not an easy finisher to do.
The Nightfall, but such a great, I mean, especially as a comic book fan, that's such an awesome, and he does
But I
it
mean,
correctly.
just think about it. Like he gets them up in his shoulders and he flips them completely 180 degrees over their head so he can bring their neck down on his knee.
Right.
That takes a lot of strength for, and
and
he has done that on some big guys. And to get some big guys up on your shoulders and flip them around like that is like, I don't know. Are you sure you want that as your finisher? But actually, this does remind me because I want to jam through a little bit because we got there's a bunch of dark, but there's a bunch of dynamite.
Sure.
Yeah. But there were a bunch of great matches. I think we should touch on all of them. The Acclaimed and Dark Order match was great. The Shida Diamante match was great. But I do want to touch on my absolute favorite match on Elevation, on All of Dark, maybe for this entire week, was Brian Cage and Will Hobbs murdering two dudes whose names I don't even know. It was great. I don't know. On one hand, I felt like, why waste this on Dynamite? This is what you should be doing with these guys on Dynamite. They should 100%. Yeah, just two giant guys. But like, there's two ways to do a giant guy tag team. It's either two giant guys who only ever wrestle against other giant guys, and the thing is, there's just not that many other giant guys, or who just wrestle against small guys and crush them like the Road Warriors, which is what they did here. They came out, Brian Cage, did a couple of things, tagged to Will Hobbs, and Will Hobbs' moveset isn't giant, but you know what? Doesn't need to be. And this match proved, if all he can do is a clothesline, a body slam, and a spine buster, it's all he needs. He doesn't ever need to learn. Don't teach him anything else. He doesn't need to learn anything else. Just let him do those three things. And he went, I don't know which one of these poor guys it was. I think it might have been Kendall Blake, but Will Hobbs just grabbed him, body slammed him. And we've seen this before. So you're like, okay, so now he's going to attack. Nope, picked him up again. Body slammed him again. Body slammed him again. 10, and like by the 6th or 7th time when he would stop, the guy was just like, it was the perfect selling. It wasn't just Hobbs, it was the perfect selling job. Because by like the 6th time, the guy was just flat on the mat, like all of his bones had been turned to liquid. And then Hobbs would pick him up again and body slam him again. And each time he landed, he found like some way to lay on the mat, like more damage had been done to him, even though 3 body slams back, his bones had been liquefied. So by the 10th time, they should have just had it stop there. I mean, I know Cage, they need Cage to get in and do stuff. Plus, they got to move forward on the Cage breakup, which we will also talk more about. But they should have just after like the 10th one, just let him put his foot on the guy's chest and count to 10. No, they tag out and Brian Cage
does. I think he's criminally underutilized anyway. Hobbs. I mean, especially because even the Cody, where he joined Team Taz, that was a good storyline, and people were behind it. And people liked that he joined Team Taz and all that type of stuff, but then they did like nothing with him.
Well, I think that there was kind of like the same thing we saw here is that he needed more seasoning. They probably saw a lot of promise in him, but at the same time there were like limitations on how long he could go in a ring.
I say take off, man.
But I think that if they're taking Brian, one of the many good things about if they're taking Brian Cage out of Team Taz is now that's time for Will Hobbs to shine, especially with Ricky Starks hurt. That's going to be Will Hobbs is going to be the guy, and in theory, in all like the big Team Taz matches, and until you get to a point, maybe at some point in the future, we'll get to Hobbs and Starks tagging together. But no, this was so they tagged out and Cage came in and he beat up the other guy with all of his moves and they won. But I didn't care. Like after those 10 body slams, I was like, nothing else is going to live up to that.
Why don't we see more of that? That's what I would like.
Why don't we see more? I don't need every match to be that. Yeah. And if there was one match like that on every show, it would probably get old. And maybe it's because they don't do it very often and they don't have such big giant guys. And they don't want to do it.
This is the first time we're seeing it in all the at least a year that you've been there.
Basically, now? I mean, well, this was basically, and we saw it, and there were a couple of these this week. This was basically what every initial Lance Archer match was, where he would come out and murder a guy for like a minute and then do the blackout.
Which he's back to that.
Yeah. Which is back to that, thank God. But this was even more than that. Like it's like, what if you just did the blackout and then picked the guy up and did the blackout again and picked
that
like 10 times?
This was sanctioned violence.
No, this was sanctioned murder. They shouldn't have even let the guy, because I think the guy did like roll out and crawl out of the ring himself, but they shouldn't have even let him do that. They should have had to have like some people come in and pick him up and drag him away because he was unable to move. But what can you do? That
One
was
other thing
one of the best
I like
things of this week.
I like the the thing about the acclaimed Dark Order match that was on Elevation too was they had a really good line, which was hide your wife, hide your daughter, the two least popular people in Dark Order. I thought that was pretty good.
There was
It's not as racy as the other stuff, but it made me laugh.
they had if you haven't watched this week's Elevation, it was acclaimed versus Alex Reynolds in 5 again, and they had an even worse one. But which I'm assuming at some point is leading to Reynolds in 5 getting a victory over them. But with the upside and the downside they claimed, and I don't say this lightly because actually they're really good as a tag team already, and they're getting better each time. So their in-ring's really good. Reynolds and 5 are both criminally undervalued for their ring work stuff.
I like 5 a lot. I think his finisher is great. I think he has a lot of energy.
Like when he's gotten to have like straight matches, especially where he's going to go over, they're great. I mean, most of the time, for better or for worse, he's put in the role of the kind of goofy fumbling guy who's going to take the pin. But and Reynolds was in that and still is to some degree in that. He's getting a lot of time now, mainly because Silver is out. But
when's Silver coming back?
Shouldn't be too much. Probably, I take that back.
He's on TV all the time.
Well, because he's like the second most over person. If you consider Adam Page,
I get it. I'm just like, look healthy, bro. Get in the
I don't want him to rush it. Don't let him rush it. He'll get when he gets here. It'll be like he's never like Statlander was gone for a year. Then when she came back, it's like she never left. So
but she tore her ACL. That was a major injury.
That was a major one. This one, I won't be surprised if it's like the end of the summer. But this match is really good. But at the same time, like the acclaim, like Max Caster's raps are so good. It's almost like by the time he's done and gets in the ring, you've seen the best part of the match, and everything else is going to be downhill after that.
No, but they're good in the ring. I mean,
they're good in the ring. Their matches are really good. Well, they both still got to do some smoke and mirrors. They always have to do something with the chain and the boombox and whatnot, but it was good. I really liked I know you're not a big fan. I really liked the Wingmen versus the Varsity Blondes. They're both kind of goofy gimmicks, but I like them a lot.
Is Varsity Blondes supposed to be a goofy gimmick? I thought it was just a gimmick.
It's supposed to be a gimmick, but some people find it goofy. I'm not necessarily one of them. But
that's the word for it. Okay.
It's not quite to. I mean, it's not like intentionally goofy the way
that's not good.
Are. But it's better, especially since they added Julia Hart. I liked this a lot. I liked the addition of Julia Hart doing like cheerleader stuff in the on the floor whenever they get a good vibe going. Sure. She's gonna have like a match with Penelope Ford coming out, so it seems like good things are
happening. Oh wow, yeah, Penelope Ford. I haven't heard that name in a while.
I know. Yeah. Well, she was like dealing with like some kind of injury that also. I know. No,
dead career.
Apparently, she had like some kind of major allergic reaction to her makeup, to the makeup they had her wearing, and that kept her off TV for a little bit while she was recuperating.
I guess that'll do.
Yeah, that was a weird one. But I had the Shida Diamante continues to be now still stuck.
That was the main event. Yeah, I was surprised that was the main event.
I'm not. I mean, they've been really judicious with it like this. Like they've given Tay Conti this.
Like, gotta put the Uno match as the main event.
Yeah. No, Shida makes sense. I mean, she was a world champion, just lost. Sure. She's starting her climb back, and can they use her like you need to watch Elevation because you're gonna watch Shida start her climb back. Came in with her new haircut and. They were one of the best matches.
Ring gear too, white and red.
Ring gear. So it gives a new look. And there's not enough space on Dynamite for this to go.
She was like smiling and stuff during the match and everything. Yeah. Did you see that? I was like, wow. Yeah. It looked like she'd enjoyed herself in the match in a while.
She and Diamante had a really good match, a lot of fun. Diamante's still stuck in the area.
About to say,
being able to have a really good match and then put the other woman over, which I feel so bad about, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess now that's pretty much all that happened at Dynamite. So you want to run down Dark?
Yeah, Dark didn't have anything near as much. The biggest thing for me was that you had some build up to Dynamite. You had Lance Archer murdered Zicky Dice, which if anybody knows who Zicky Dice, he's a really some people really like him a lot. He's a really, in my view, obnoxious.
Oh, it's an actual person?
Wrestler. He's an actual person. He was on NWA for a lot. He's the guy who was TV champion after Ricky Starks. And he apparently there's lots of conflicting information, but the story that I've heard from the most different people is that he got, even before NWA was getting shut down, he basically was getting fired for having tons of heat in the back for refusing to put people over and basically being all about
the Hulk Hogan. Okay.
And so I was hoping that this is not the beginning of seeing regular things from Zicky Dice, because the one thing you hear the most about AEW is how good the locker room is, how good the vibe is. Everybody's working together to make one solid show. So the last thing he needs is a guy like that coming in. But he didn't come in for very long. He came in for about 30 seconds and got murdered by Lance Archer, which is what Lance Archer should be doing, and it was great. I hope that's the last one. And I don't usually say guys who come into these things, but this one I am saying.
Yeah, that's I mean, Lance is obviously what he does is lose the title shot, then start his way at the bottom kind of, but bottom might mean he starts beating up jobbers on the way to the ring. That's what I consider is like the bottom for him. And then he builds his way back up to serious competition again. So we're just back in that phase of Lance's career.
There's a great one. I'll bring it up when we get to Dynamite because Lance got to do that to two people this week because he did it on Dynamite too. So you can tell who they're really focused on building that up. But the same guy who got murdered by Lance on Dynamite got murdered by Wardlow on Elevation following it. And I'm like, gosh, if this is just your fate in life, you're going to be the guy who keeps getting murdered back to back by the giant dudes of the roster. There's got to be better ways to make a living than that. It was a much longer dark, so and mostly squash matches against new guys coming in. But it also had more story development than we generally get. Usually a lot of the story development's been Elevation and a bunch of squash matches on Dark, and this time it was Dark had a lot of the story development. Like you had a big, nice, long promo by Matt Hardy hiring Angelico to go and take out Christian Cage, setting that match up for Dynamite. That was the opener for Dynamite on Friday. And Hardy, got plenty of promo time on Dynamite for that too. So he didn't necessarily need this, but they're nice and slowly building that up. So if you're watching all the shows, you're ready for that. You can see the build up, and they're preparing for that. Plus, they gave Angelico some ring time ahead of it, so he can get ready for that. And they also had the continuation of this long building Sunny Kiss Joey Janela story that has been happening only on the Dark shows, and you won't know what's happened with it if you only watch Dynamite. But obviously we've seen a few weeks ago Sunny Kiss had a singles match and was getting round, I believe it was the Factory, and she was getting roundly beaten up at the end. Joey Janela, I didn't come to his partner's aid. He hightailed it, he got out of there. And this week, and he's been,
you have to use that to Nip Factory.
Yeah, well, he probably. And there was, so they had a nice little promo where they're asking when he's gonna. He got hurt in that Hangman Page match, and now they're asking him to come back, and he's, not really caring about helping with his partner. He really just interested in grabbing Alex Marvez and heading off to the local go-go bar, and who wouldn't want to?
Right.
Having a bad boy.
People don't call them. I mean, I'm from Houston.
I think on TV and even YouTube, where they don't want to go that far in, they still call them go-go clubs to maintain some level of respectability. I think is what it is. But obviously, Sunny Kiss actually did have a match coming up on this Dark, and she needed her partner in her corner to back her up, and he said yes. And then the second that the back was turned, he was grabbing Alex Marvez and heading out for the go-go bar. So we know what Joey Janela's word is worth now, which led into Aaron Solo versus Sunny Kiss, and she lost again and got beaten up by the Factory, or he lost again and got beaten up by the Factory again. And no Joey Janela anywhere in sight to back up his partner. I don't think that tag team is very long for this world.
No, but I liked it. That's a sad thing. I actually liked it. I have a shirt in there, so the shirts are awesome too. I thought it was a good tag team. I still remember when they did their first vignette, like of where like Sonny was in a convenience store, and he was
that was on Double or Nothing.
That was a great player.
I mean, that was on last year's Double or Nothing. They used a lot of space on a big pay-per-view for that to build up that tag team, and it doesn't seem like it ever really got off the ground. They just got mired, like right away. They got mired in the mid card. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe just no one's reacting. Maybe they're doing that based on merchandise sales because there's no crowds to figure out that it's like they both.
I mean, I bought 2 shirts. How much more do I need to buy?
They just got mired in the mid card, and I don't know. Maybe they'll never get out. I don't know. But then they gave a Dynamite match to Joey. They gave two of them to Joey with Adam Page and Kenny Omega in the last 6 months, and
and before that, Sunday got to be fed to Kenny Omega quite famously. So two other things I wanted to talk about with the Zark episode, because really, you're right. There wasn't there was some storyline stuff, but it wasn't much of squashes. There was. So two things.
Tay Conti match was good. The Matt Sydal Dante Martin match was really good.
Well,
but
don't
go ahead. I know. Dante Martin's really good. I haven't yet seen.
Yeah, that did go a while. Actually, they gave it a lot of time.
They gave that one a lot of time.
Well, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But no, Abaddon. I love Abaddon matches. I think it's a nice little horror interlude, like in when you're watching wrestling. And I think she does a good job. But I know you can't ever take her seriously like a champion or anything. It's not 1998 all over again, right? So I get that, but they're so fun to put on the show,
I guess
I like it when she bit her opponent, and then Ricky goes, "Oh wait, I think she's going to turn into whatever Abaddon is."
Yes, that was funny. You gotta have the right announcer to make those matches work, especially because Abaddon can't talk and only has, certain very specific reactions and selling to anything. I don't know. I'm over the Abaddon thing. I thought it was kind of interesting when she showed up the first time, but it's, just the nature of the gimmick. It's the same match every time. And that
is true.
That it was like they tried hard. They put her in a title match with Shida, and that may have been the worst champion title defense that Shida actually had to do. And, they tried hard, but there's just, what can you do with it? I don't know. It's like the Fiend.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to talk about was Cyrus, you see that?
That was a good.
Who did you keep thinking of? Because there's one name I kept thinking of when I saw that guy.
Nothing.
Ryback.
I guess
was like,
so.
It kind of looked like Ryback, man. Like with the eye thing and even his face and expressions, he was very much like Ryan Reeves. It really looked like a lot like that.
Okay. I did not think that at all until you said it, but I can see it now that you say that.
Yeah.
But I like that they're really starting to give stuff to Cesar Bononi. Like it's like it feels.
And that was
like,
a good slam for him to finish the match,
especially for somebody that big. But it feels like they looked at the wingman. They're like, okay, what it feels like they're like, all right, we're going to do something with Cesar because he's the one who's getting the matches and getting a lot of the wins, but he can't talk. So we're going to give him all of these.
But they're letting him talk more.
They're letting him talk more, and I think they've been kind of doing the same thing with JD Drake, but where they're like, all right, it's like Ryan Nemeth and Peter Avalon can do the talking and the goofiness and the charisma, but then Cesar can go in the ring and look like a serious contender, but he's not going to be able to talk like a serious contender, and he's not going to be able to pull off the humor either. So we need somebody who can do that for him. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, Ryan Nemeth had a great spot in that match where remember he was on the other side of the ring and he took off his jacket and did a running start and tried to do a body press into Cyrus, who just stood there no sold it. Like,
that was
great.
Awesome. That was great.
I mean, that guy Ryan Nemeth is pretty funny.
The only bit I saw that was better than that is when we get to Dynamite. My second favorite thing of this week, which was Evil Uno versus Miro.
Right. Well, actually, we can just move on to Dynamite because I think we've already talked about everything that was good at Dark.
I think so. Everything else, you had a bunch of Factory there. QT Marshall versus.
Well, I'm not going to talk much about that.
I just wanted Bear Bronson to go over because I'm such a fan for Bear Country, and he needs Bear Bowler to come back so that he can get his power back. All right.
But yeah, I mean, let's go ahead and start with Dynamite then. Dynamite. We mentioned this before. Christian beat Angelico, which we all know is going to happen.
Yeah, that's Angelico's role. But you know what? How long has it been since TH2's been on TV, been on Dynamite? And I can't always tell.
And that's what I was going to bring up because I have friends that don't really watch the YouTube shows. They just watch Dynamite and that's it. And so to them, they're like, they don't see Angelico very much at all. That's just a simple way to put it.
And beyond that, sounds weird.
Not any reason to care about the guy.
That's why it always sounds weird because I am watching all the YouTube shows every week, so that whenever I hear someone say like, I haven't seen this in a while, what happened to him? And I'll be like, what are you talking about? I see him all the time. I see him wrestle every week, sometimes twice.
I still struggle with the concept because it's like, okay, so it's on YouTube. I get that it's not on TV, but why does that mean that you don't want to watch it? That's the part that I never get. It's like it's very easy to access it. Like you just don't want to watch it because you don't want to watch it. It's not because
I get the one where if you wouldn't rather look at it. The only thing I think, and I can get some of this if they would look at it and be like, oh my God, it's 2.5 hours, because that might turn you away. But
fucking love wrestling, man.
But, I know.
Watch that once the wrestling.
But yeah, it's not so hard to watch. It's easy to find.
Right.
And
fast forward matches. Yeah.
I can't tell who's got the more skewed view of what's like really going on because, is it the people who are only watching Dynamite? They're like, you know what? If they want these people to get over, it needs to be on TV. I'm not seeing anything.
Common lament I always heard that exact phrase.
Or is it people like me who are going like, what do you mean need them to get over? What do you mean you haven't seen them in months? I see these people wrestle every week. They're wrestling all
especially
the time.
when they bring up the records and stuff, right?
Yeah, so exactly.
Because the records, that's where the factors in. It's from Dark and Elevation. Yeah. Like, another good example is like, even though Britt Baker's already extremely over and everything, but to the ones like us who watch every single show, she was even more over because you started putting that work all the way up there. Yeah. And if you just watch Dynamite, you wouldn't see her put in that work. So, and I think that was kind of important to that storyline.
And that's where, people are going to come in and learn, and people get over that way. I mean, Bear Country didn't come out of nowhere. They came out of dark. And Will Hobbs did not come out of nowhere. He came out of dark, and you could see him, doing well and making stuff work, even with like the limitations that he had, just in those handful of matches. There's a couple of new people who are on this time or have been recently new, like Natalia Markova. I think we might see her. I like her. I think we should. So like Julia Hart came out of that, and she got a really good spot, but that helped. But Natalia Markova, we should see her on Dynamite. I think her ring work could get better, but there's definitely a spot if she sticks around. There's a really good spot for her on the regular Dynamite Women's Roster or Rampage, especially once they start having that third hour. There are a couple of others. Their names they didn't wrestle like this week, so their names aren't immediately occurring to me, but I will remember them and bring them up the next time that they are around. All right, so Dynamite, Christian Cage. Also, his matches keep getting better. I know everybody talked about his first match with Frankie Kazarian was both good, but it also looked like he was getting winded, and he needs more ring time. But this match was really good. I don't know if it's the best one he's had yet, but it was good. And especially if they are eventually going to have him do some kind of program with Kenny Omega, 8 years out of the ring, he needs to get some of that back. And he does not do dark elevation, which is probably the right call when you're, in your mid 40s and you've been out of the ring for like 8 years. It's probably best just to save it for television. I wish he had some more because Christian can also talk really well. And I know they've got so much stuff to do, but give, Matt Hardy's getting 3 promos a week. Give Christian a promo.
And that was a note I had on this is because I know that they're both very capable and they're both very good, and you get why this is happening because it really started with the Double or Nothing Rumble, the Battle Royale match where basically Matt Hardy felt like Christian sold him out at the end and let Jungle Boy win. Yeah. But I just wish there was a little bit more story behind it rather than just that setting up a feud.
Well, I don't think it's just that. It's one of the things that it's one of the things I like that AEW does better than any of the other big wrestlers. I mean, I won't say none of them do it because WWE will, when it suits their purposes, play off their history, and then they'll also just as likely to turn around and act like nothing happened before today, and this is all brand new. Whereas AEW always is aware of history and does not act like its viewers are morons who have forgotten all the wrestling they've ever watched. So this feels like it's more like the logical next step in both men's history. They have flat out, they've had Matt Hardy come flat out say it, like, you and I have been wrestling with each other forever. You have been trying to steal my spot forever, and I'm sick of it. And even though, especially if you're even remotely aware of their history, even though Hardy is clearly the heel, you can almost kind of see his point. And so to that effect, it makes sense. And it's more than just the battle. The battle royale just reignited it again.
Right. But I feel like you have to be like one of us, like someone who's watched wrestling for 20 years to really get it.
Well, and this is going to be in my catchphrase, for better or for worse, AEW does sort of lean into that. Like, they are aware and they don't shy away from that. Like, they're not acting like, well, we're getting you 12-year-olds who are watching this for the first time every time, and so why bother with history? They're not that deluded. They're like very aware that a lot, if not most of our audience actually are people who have been watching wrestling for 20 plus years.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We're going to feed into that fact. So, which makes it mean a lot for weirdos like us, and maybe be instantly insanely confusing for other people.
So Christian beat Angelico here, and then they started wailing on him, and the Jungle Boy came for the save.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of interesting, but at the same time, I'm like, does Christian not have that many friends in AEW?
Well, he hasn't been around long enough yet. I think Jungle Boy's his first friend. I know it does make you feel like, but he's got a tag team.
He's making part of Jungle Express then. I mean,
yeah, I know, where's Jungle Express? But yeah, no, they don't want to do that. And it's good. They should do that. But, it plays into the immediate history we just had with, he and Christian tag teaming last week, and the continuing story from the Battle Royale. They didn't just forget it or drop it. Everything that happened there mattered, and it still matters now, which is why you've got to pay attention to this stuff. And
right.
And it keeps us reminding us the Jungle Boy's out here, and he's a
exactly. That's what I was going to bring up. Is it reminds us that Jungle Boy's out there, yeah. Because he was like, it wasn't like last week where he was on TV all the time. This week, right. He was actually mainly just doing promos and just hanging out, not really doing matches. So it was a good way to put him on TV.
Yeah,
because that's the show that everyone watches, not the YouTube stuff.
Yeah. Right. You got to remind everyone he's here. He won a bunch of stuff. He's getting ready to wrestle for the title, and he's our fearless babyface. And let's remember it. But then, of course,
before you get to the next match, I have another question I got to ask you.
Yeah.
Wasn't Brandon Cutler actually a good wrestler at one point?
He's still
like a passable wrestler.
He's a passable wrestler. It's just part of this thing, and I guess it's like that. These are your two options. They turned him into you can stay on the YouTube only shows and do top decent wrestling to the top of your ability, or you can be on TV, but you've got to be a geek.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he goes a ladder. He says a ladder.
Well, if you've been watching,
what do you think of this match?
I was to say, if you've been watching Being the Elite, and doesn't have much choice, because apparently the Young Bucks have been basically holding his employment over his head and be like, you're going to do this, or you're out on the street. How long is that mortgage you've got? 30 years? Hey, be a bad thing if something happened to that contract of yours. But
well, that's his Rancho Cucamonga boys.
That's right.
Every time I keep thinking Workaholics, because that show was set in Rancho Cucamonga.
It wasn't that long ago. I mean, just really like a month ago that he was coming out in his dragon costume with his dragon mask and his big music, and now he's coming out with his face mask and his tracksuit.
And the aerosol ski is great. Yeah,
the aerosol. I do want to say, like, of everybody, and this is like ultimate nerd cred, of everyone in AEW, he has one of my favorite finisher names, which is Total Party Kill. Actually, I think they just call it TPK. But if you know,
right,
you know.
Yeah, I didn't know what it stood for. So I knew it was called the TPK, but I didn't know it was called
Total Party Kill. It's a D&D term. I am here for it. It was actually one of the best things I saw on Being this time, because Brandon Cutler because he's recording on that camera. It's not just a prop. He's using it in the match the whole time, and he's staying, is holding kayfabe the whole time, so that you can actually, so they put all the footage from his camera on Being the Elite, so you can hear him going up to, as he's running up to Pac, he's going, "I'm sorry, Pac, they're making me do it," and he's still, even as he's whacking him with it, he's still apologizing. "I'm sorry, I don't want to do it."
I mean, it was great. Whenever he gets to stop beating you up, I would try to.
Well, it's like no one would ever know that. So, I just appreciate the extra effort, because only the wrestlers are around the ring for this episode. They didn't have right. Like a lot of fans in the building, so no one else was going to hear him. But you know what? You work good. You put in that effort, and I appreciate that.
But they had like two guys in that role. It's Michael Nakazawa or Randy Cutler, right?
Well, it was depending on where you're at, because like Nakazawa is Kenny Omega's stooge, and Brandon Cutler is the Young Bucks stooge. Yeah, because you don't see them unless it's like a trios match. You don't see them all around stooging at the same time. But
right, and then you have the
Good Brothers who come in and do whatever whenever they feel like it. They probably always will. I mean, because they were originally supposed to be with AEW from the beginning, and it didn't happen. So I think now.
Why didn't it happen? It seems like AEW signed every fucking month.
They got offered $750,000 a year by Vince McMahon, and they said, "Yeah, And yeah, I on the one hand, I don't blame them. Like you don't, it's hard. It would be really hard to turn that amount of money.
No, but when they left WWE, why didn't they sign with AEW?
Well, I think that the roster was like really full because they left AEW or WWE. They left WWE. They got released by WWE.
They got fired
In the beginning days of the pandemic, when also AEW was doing all their shows out of a warehouse in Georgia, and nobody knew if they were actually going to be able to survive or anything, because it could have been like,
Right.
I can definitely, if you're in AEW shoes at that point, you're thinking like TNT could have some real funding problems if this goes on.
Not like it
they
matters.
Could cancel our contract.
AEW all the time. So,
but now, well, I mean, that's why they didn't go right away. They went to Impact, and because they had to get a job, and they had to get a job where they couldn't leave the country. Because from what I understand, like what they really wanted to do was go back to New Japan, and New Japan wants them back, and that is almost certainly what they will do. Once they can fly to Japan back and forth. But they needed a job, and Impact took them. But then once but obviously once you could start to move around, and you weren't working in a bubble, and you couldn't have just like 10 wrestlers in the entire building. You're like, all right, what can we do? And they start bringing the Good Brothers back. And they were probably having these thoughts much earlier than they showed up, and decided somewhere along the lines like, let's hold that off until we do the Kenny stuff, because we're going to do all this heel turn stuff with Kenny. It'll make more sense. Because originally, I think the plan was that they were going to show up on the first episode of Dynamite and be like, we're reuniting the Bullet Club and be friends with the Young Bucks and Kenny. And then at the very end, we're going to turn on them. At the very end of the first episode, we're going to turn on them and beat them up. And that was going to be like the big surprise that ended that episode. But that, then that ended up not happening. And now they're doing something different. Right. It makes me feel like, but they were always meant to be there doing something all the time, even if they're not like, but even if they're just being guys. And it feels like that's what they're going to be. Even if they go to New Japan and they're going back and forth, they'll be going back and forth between New Japan and AEW, and they'll be showing up on AEW, whatever, and just hanging out and doing stuff, especially when you're talking about like your good friends or
doing dick jokes on BT and all that stuff. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very, very proficient with their dick jokes.
Yeah. But you know what? We got a Young Bucks versus Death Triangle match at the start, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's almost no way on earth that can turn into a bad match, and it didn't. And
it was Eddie good booking because you had the faces go over, but at the same time Cutler took the pin, so that's good. You don't want to see the one Young Bucks win everything. Right, so, and
they can't because there's no heat. But at one point, you're like, as soon as they say it's a 6-man and Brandon Cutler's in, they're like, oh well, I know who's going over, and I know who's taking the pin because that's why he's there. But you know what? But that's okay. You don't need to swerve every time. Sometimes the most obvious thing is exactly what it should be. And you had like that really nice story. You had that nice promo at the start from Eddie, where Pac just won't speak at all, and everyone's staying. And then even in the match, Pac doesn't want anything to do with Eddie, and Eddie got the knockout and then set it up for the pin, and maybe they're building bridges and maybe they're not, and he's still referring to Pentagon like his best friend from all those months
ago. Like a look, like I don't know if he's serious. He's like my best friend. Like I don't know if he's like,
but it feeds back into all that stuff from last year, because they don't think that we're idiots, and they think that we will remember stuff that they have done in the recent past, and they will use that to build more mythology and layers to their stories, which I really appreciate.
And I like Frankie's new role is like this the
elite hunter.
But like how long? I mean, that doesn't have much of a shelf life. He's got to have an actual program. Like, is he going to lead up to him feuding with somebody from the elite?
I'm assuming it's going to be they'll throw him into some tag stuff, which they're clearly getting ready to do just as an extra man. But then maybe he'll probably start to have some one-on-ones. Probably, I expect him to do like singles program with both Matt and Nick, one and then the other. And then maybe leading up to a TV match with Kenny Omega, something like that. So we'll see how far it goes. I assume it's going to go up until the point where Kenny and the Bucks turn face again, but we'll see. I think it's one of those things where you look back in the past, we're like, okay, it's very clear that that they're doing with Frankie right now is something that was in their minds way back in January when SCU said the next match we lose is the end of SCU, and they were like, all right, we're going to break up SCU, and that's going to lead into Frankie doing this, and it's stuff that they've had, and which you keep hearing. We said this before. We keep hearing all this talk about I don't understand. The storyline's never on TV. They never advance it. What's happening with that? And I'm sitting there going, it's on dark every week. I know everything.
Well, this
that's
storyline
happening
actually,
with
the Frankie one has been on Dynamite. I think if you watch
the
that,
Frankie one has been on Dynamite because that's where the Elite are.
yeah,
But
so
like
you
the,
broke up on Dynamite. That's all
SC,
you need to know.
right. Well, like the SCU where they were winning, they laid down their challenge and they were talking about it and they were winning all their matches. And there were a lot of people complaining, like, why aren't they winning a bunch of matches on Dynamite leading up to breaking up? So it feels like something. Like, it feels like something to me. I'm watching them win matches every week. They're winning matches every week. What are you complaining about?
I wasn't very hot on the SCU gimmick. I didn't hate it. It just felt bland as a gimmick itself. Not that the wrestlers weren't bland, but the gimmick itself was like, oh, you guys are all just from Southern California, and that's the name of your group. And okay, like nothing in the way of promos.
Well, they weren't really able to do anything with it. I mean, it from what I've heard, it got over real big on the indies, but by the time AEW started, it was like they had a bunch of other tag teams they had to get over. And so, SCU was kind of sidelined, even though, I mean, they got a bunch of stuff early on, but they, like a lot of the stuff that made them interesting promos and interesting personalities, they just weren't doing. And, or they do like bits and pieces of it, but it wouldn't make any sense. Like, why does Christopher Daniels come down with a microphone and dance and wear sunglasses? I don't know. I mean, it's something I'm assuming from.
Yeah, the Freddie Mercury outfits and everything. I was like, hey.
It's like, I assuming it's something from, past shows and past acts that people who really been following this for years know. Maybe it's something all the way back
to Curryman. Wasn't he Curryman for a while?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But
that's interesting.
But it also feels like, a lot of that early SCU stuff was built around building up Scorpio Sky and getting him into a point where he can be like a main event singles guy. Very interestingly, he, even when he's in SCU, he didn't really feel like he got to have a lot of his personality coming out. It's not only really been since he's done single stuff, both right before and right after the heel turn, that like a lot of the actual personality. I really like his bits with Ethan Page. I'm not sure about this Men of the Year.
It's obnoxious. It's so obnoxious.
It's supposed to be.
And there's nothing against this, but apparently their gimmick is that they're in love with each other, because that's really what it seems like out there. I'm like,
well, they both think that they are the most awesome. Well, like you hear the name of their tag team is the Men of the Year, and like how they're better. They're super awesome, and like their video is them like on the front page of Time magazine or something. Like,
well, yeah, it's a Men of the Year.
That one. May could have used some more workshopping, but I don't know. What do I know?
And then it's the conspiracy stuff with Kenny. I'm assuming from the tone that I got in Dynamite is that they're treating it like not as a serious thing, like they're kind of joking around with it, right? Like they're not going to pursue it, right? Is it going to be more conspiracy shit going forward?
I hope not.
Because that's going to be.
I hope that this was it. It felt like it was being funny. Like it was supposed to be goofy and just show how craven the heels are, but that's as far as it will go. We shall see.
But and then what did you think of the Pinnacle promos? I like Sean's the best out of all of them. Actually.
I like Sean's
I think he's an underrated talker.
He is. I think he's a very underrated. I think he's an underrated talker, and he's an underrated in-ring talent. I think he is actually one of my favorite heel guys. I remember I really noticed him when he was in the program with Cody, and I was sitting there watching him and going like, this guy could be a main event talent. Why isn't anybody giving him that push? And
even when he was goofy Sean, I like that. I thought he did that well too. I mean, he can just act. He's a good actor.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people question and go like, why is Sean Spears on TV? Why are they giving this all this stuff? Like, no,
Sean Sammy's going to be a great feud. I mean, that's going to be a great series.
Yeah, Sean Sammy. See what they're leading up to MJF Sammy, which makes sense. But MJF's had his time with Jericho. Use this time to build up to individual glory for Sammy. Yeah, FTR versus Proud and Powerful, I think will be a great tag team match. I can't see that being anything other than great. And I am genuinely looking forward to. They let Wardlow talk, which is always interesting because it feels like he's someone that they should build up at some point and to eventually be a main event guy, which means he needs to be able to talk. But we never find out if he can or not. So it's always interesting when he does. But you know what? Jake Hager, Wardlow, MMA style cage fight, I think is a great idea. I have seen I haven't watched it.
It'd be interesting for sure.
I haven't watched a lot. Like I've never really watched Josh Barnett's Bloodsport or any of that stuff. So I have not, or UWF stuff. So I haven't seen a lot of work shoot matches, but I've seen a few. And if the people really know it, like I saw very recently, I think it was Ken Shamrock's first ever pay-per-view match, and they put him in with Vader, but they did it like work shoot style. So like when they come in the ring, like there's no lockup. There's no there eventually is some pro wrestling stuff, but it takes like a long time. There's no lockup. He's like Shamrock's
striking.
Yeah, like Shamrock's in his fighting stance. He's starting out like first 5 minutes. He's just doing calf kicks, which is what you actually see in MMA fights to take the big man. And they're doing lots of that, and they're doing striking, and then eventually some submission holds, and eventually, like as it goes on and works and builds to the finish, you start to get a lot of big drops and you know.
But Ken's a great guy to do that.
But in a way, yeah, well, they both are. And like at that point in time, from what I've read, like Vader had already done a lot of that stuff in Japan, so he was exactly the right guy to do it. You know, I think it might be asking a bit much to expect that Wardlow and Jake Hager are going to be able to be.
But you're saying it's not going to be bad, or you'd be surprised with that.
I don't think so. I mean, the fact is, if you have one guy who actually has a lot of the legitimate MMA experience leading the way, which Hager does, which is why Hager's the right guy for this kind of match. I think so. I mean, I think he's going to have to lead Wardlow through it a bit, but I think that they can come up with something. And if that's what I mean, if they just have it be a match, then you know it'll probably be fine. But they keep saying cage match under MMA rules, so which I think will make for a very nice change of pace, especially for viewers who haven't really seen that sort of thing before.
Dana White's going to be like, this is horse shit.
Apparently he and Tony Khan said, but I was thinking I'm like, how far will they go into that? Is it going to be like 3-minute rounds, and will they be allowed to have cornermen? Because I personally think that would be great.
They're going to make it just like that. Probably have like an octagon or something.
Well, it is definitely. I think it's definitely going to be in an octagon. So we'll see. And I've seen things like that work too. There was like a SummerSlam where Owen Hart and Ken Shamrock. It was all Ken Shamrock, but Owen Hart and Ken Shamrock did basically an octagon match that was like work shoot. That was great. I mean, it was legitimately great. And Jake Hager and Wardlow are not Owen Hart and Ken Shamrock.
Right. But you're just saying you've seen that type of thing before, and
it can definitely work. So I think, definitely if they put it in an octagon and they have something like, and it's something that seems like, I feel like the closer to like MMA rules, you know, it really sets it apart. And I think it can make that match feel special. And the way they're advertising it, it sounds like it's going to be the main event this week. So,
which is good because you know I am getting sick of their promos back and forth destroying each other's properties. It seems like that's happening almost every other week. I'd rather they just get to the matches.
Maybe, but I could watch the video of that forklift tearing into that limo over there.
It's something Stone Cold hasn't ever done. So
no, but the Stone Cold one was like a Stone Cold one. This one, it's not. I don't think it was supposed to be this way, but it almost felt like a couple of goose doing it, which I don't think was the feeling they were going for. It made me laugh because they were destroying this limo with a forklift that Jake Hagar is actually driving for real, and you can tell while they're doing it. You know, I guess that, you know, it's something that's expensive enough. You don't really get a chance to rehearse it or anything. So
Jake Hager, need a license also.
Jake Hager is trying to figure out how to drive a forklift. At the same time, he is trying to figure out how to destroy a limo with it. And you can see it working. And at some point, Jericho is giving him like shoot instructions like, no, hit that lever. No, that one. Lift it up.
Next turn it around.
I was laughing so hard. And only partially at what they did to the limo, but more like this is great. I think every week, this week Jake Hager learns how to operate a nuclear reactor plant and a giant crane. So I laughed, whether I was supposed to or not. I actually did end up laughing pretty hard at that. And
so I guess you haven't really reached your threshold with all that just yet.
I don't want to see any more of it. I think we've got it. You know, if I can't have every week of this week a promo by the Pinnacle, that week a promo by the Circle. We've been doing that for almost 2 months now, and 2 matches in between them. Now we're lining up a bunch of singles matches. Let's get to it.
Get to it, exactly.
Yeah. I want
So
to see
speaking
that
of doing-
FTR PMP match. But all right, speaking of,
So the Sting thing with Darby Allin, mine, because this is what happened, right? Where Darby, it makes sense what Darby said, because
I
really
guess.
we talked about that match, and it really did feel like Darby was getting beat the fuck up all match while Sting did the work. But the thing I thought was funny is because they have such like a father-son almost relationship on TV.
Yeah.
That even when Sting was like, "What? You don't want me there?" Like, okay, all right, you got this. And then I was like, "Wait, does Sting go home like a mug of tea with both hands, play cats in the cradle, and like stare out the window?"
I can see it. I can believe it. I have nothing to do. No, he's probably watching it on TV.
Rolls down his eye.
Maybe. No, he's hanging.
But what
on
do you think's
roof
gonna happen with
just-
that match? I mean, do you think Darby's gonna
get murdered?
Yeah.
And no one's gonna be there to save him. And I'm certain that they have. I think that Darby's really good at being babyface in peril while getting the crap kicked out of him. So they're going to give him an opportunity to have a lot of that happen and then lose. And he's going to try and fight out of it, and he's going to almost fight out of it, but it's going to be too much. I am certain
I kind of
that they
think there might be someone saving him that's like a new person to add to the mix.
I don't think so. I mean, I can totally see it because that's generally what you would do in a situation like this. And if it was anyone other than Darby, I could kind of see it, but I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think that they're going to set this up as an intentional handicap match and then have him be saved. I am certain that they have some direction in mind, but I can't think of what it might be. I think when I see
that's the
it,
thing. You don't just set up this match randomly. A handicap match is never just a random thing. I think that's a weird random match.
Obviously, you've never watched WWE. No.
Okay, sorry.
But no, in the real world with real people who know how to book, who know how to book logically. No, you wouldn't. I think what it's going to be like. I think when the direction that it's headed is revealed, we're going to go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because that's usually the way it is when I can't figure out what AEW is doing. Usually when they do reveal it, I go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Every so often it's weird, but not that often. Right. I think this is one of those. I can't think of what reason they could have to do this, but I think when they tell us, it'll make sense.
It does make me want to watch it, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it leads interest.
I like all three people in there. I like Ethan Page. I like Darby Allin. I like Scorpio Sky. I can't see anything that I'm not going to like in it. So I'm curious. And, half of this stuff and a big part of booking is making me want to watch the next match because I don't know what's going to happen next. So in that sense, success.
Right. Let's say, well, in a sense of,
promo
leading into what, you're talking about, you don't know what's going to happen next. Uno fought Miro. We knew that.
We knew what was going to happen.
But it was a great match. I mean, they made Uno look very credible in as a threat. And having finally all of Dark Order in even -1 at ringside, like they used to do when they were an actual cult. Like I thought that was pretty cool.
No, they did a great job, and they're playing it up, and the video playing Evil Uno up. And I don't know if you've seen any of Miro's promos that he's been putting on Twitter and Instagram, but they were great. And his like monster promos are really good. He's really good at that sort of thing.
Yeah, this dominant champion thing. Like I think he should just be winning the belts all the way to the world title belt.
I mean, he needs a nice long run of just murdering.
Long run,
because that is what and this is what everyone said Miro should be doing when he was in WWE. It's what everyone said he should be doing when he came to AEW. It's what Tony Khan said he was going to be doing. You just had to wait for it, and now it's here, and it's great. And I was really looking forward to this match, and I actually thought this was going to be the main event.
Actually, one thing does bother me about Miro,
and it did not disappoint. What's that?
Miro's finisher, and I don't know if you ever heard this, but if you look, a lot of times it looks like his shoulders are down when the other guy's on top of him.
Sometimes when he goes all the way back. He shouldn't be laying.
Only thing, and I know I'm nitpicking, but it's one of those things when you watch, especially being like a wrestling referee, and so you're looking at that, you're like, hey, so shoulders, man, get him up.
I think I know that they've had him start doing the laying on his back to put it in because it looks more brutal, like he's bending the guy in half.
More MMA style.
Yeah, which you can't always see when he's got the guy in his stomach, but it does do but his shoulders might be down because sometimes they are, unless he's like getting all the way onto his head or something. Right. But that's okay because this was great. Evil Uno, like we said, is extremely underrated. He did a great job getting the shit beat out of him here. It was so fun. Just when the Mr. Brody discus lariat that just bounces off of Miro's chest like Miro is Superman, and someone tried to shoot him, and he's like, "Did a fly just touch
It's
me?"
way more interesting, but yeah.
Yes. And then he just like wallops him with the clothesline that knocks him down and knocks him over. That was so great. It was not quite as good as 9 body slams in a row, but it was pretty close. This was my second favorite match.
That's when you're like, oh wow, you did Brody's move and that did nothing. So
and it did nothing.
So the clock's sticking on your pin right now.
Yeah, it's like you did nothing, and nothing is going to happen to you have nothing that can remotely hurt Miro, and now it's just a matter of time till he gets you into the game over. And everything Miro plays the monster so well, just everything I know we've talked about how good -1 is as a manager. He's going to be
best mascot in wrestling.
He reacts exactly the way you want him to, even at ringside. And for like an 8-year-old to know that and to
he doesn't even move. He's like
TV,
upset. He's like, oh, like
no, it was great because it's all hands. Because he was like, come on, until he gets Graham, and then he's like, hands on the head. Oh no!
Yeah, you always do it, and he reacts the right way to everything.
But he understands he's got to do it with his body language because he's wearing a mask.
Exactly,
and no one can see his face.
Exaggerated motion, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's got to do it with his hands, and he knows how to do it, and he does it right. I loved it. Miro got him in, and he looks at Dark Order, looks all sad, and he waves at them while he's keeping Evil Uno in the game over. The what do they call it now? The Accolade.
Is that the new name for it?
That's the new name. Well, you can't call it the game over.
That's good. Game
over. No, it's the other way around, right? It was the Accolade in WWE. In AEW, it's the game over. That's what it is.
Oh,
I can't remember. Okay. I mean, it's basically a chic camel clutch, is what it is. But
yeah.
So the game over, I think, is what they call it. Is what they call it. I can't keep track, and they keep having to change the name of things because remember the simpler times where the wrestler was called the same thing no matter what company he went to, and his name was the same.
Yeah, but
no matter what
branding.
Now, but there's only one company that
I still call the Impaler.
Well, the thing is, there's one because every place else that a wrestler goes, they are legitimately an independent contractor, so they own the copyright and the trademark on their moves and their name. There is only one company that insists that even though the wrestler is supposed to be an independent contractor, the company own the trademark on their names and their moves, and no one can call them that. Which is why the FTR can't call their move the Shatter Machine, which is one of the best
Andrade El Idolo.
Even though Andrade is like his actual given name, and he can't use his given name or anything. But what can you do?
It's ridiculous. That's branding these days, though. If you get
Speaking of which,
it's right?
They had a really nice video for Andrade and the announcement that he's going to do a sit down with Jim Ross, and I'm sitting there going, well, why didn't you do that last week? This is a much better way to introduce him than have Vicky Guerrero come out and shout. You should have just gone to the video screen, showed the introduction video, and then cut from there to a sit down with Jim Ross, and great.
Yeah, I mean, assume they didn't have it ready at that time. That's
the only reason I could think I guess. Yeah. There was too much to do, and they didn't want to hold off on it.
Yeah, maybe Jim was busy. We don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. But, I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to his first match in the ring. And they're really presenting him like a star.
I'm wondering who he's going to feud with, but of course, that's like super open speculation because there's no hint in the storyline of him going after anybody right now.
If they were smart, I think they won't do this. I think they'll want to hold off. If they were smart, they would do something with Kenny and play off the fact that he and Kenny are going to have a match for the AAA Mega Championship.
I feel like you got built for that.
But they're going to have it. I mean, the match is set. It's happening in August, but it's for AAA. It's for another company. And if they're smart, they would talk some about that here to build into that there. But they're not going to do that. Like AEW, like even though they do a lot of work stuff with other companies, and they send their wrestlers to wrestle at other companies, they don't ever mention it. It's like if you know, but if you don't, so they're not going to build. They don't do it with Impact, and they're not doing it with AAA. They're not going to build to Kenny having an Impact championship, AAA championship match with two wrestlers, even though both wrestlers are signed to AEW. They should. I don't know. It feels like they should, but they're not. I don't know.
How come AEW has never had like a sponsorship deal with AEW?
They should. It
right?
makes sense.
I mean, come on.
Somebody needs chief. Well, their chief branding officer is getting ready to have a baby, so she's got other things in mind. But when she comes back to work,
Right.
it's time to
Congrats.
to get onto that.
Isn't Adam Page having a baby soon too?
And not soon. I think in like 9 months. I think they just announced. So his is probably like 6 or 7 months away.
Oh.
But John Moxley just had his baby yesterday. His little girl.
Yeah. It's contagious.
I know it's everywhere these days. I think that was I think there was one women's match. Wasn't there? I think there was a.
Well, I was going to say one thing
Rose
is that out of Don and Kenny's promo, I thought there was something very interesting that Don said, because when Don was like, Kenny went to Don, he's like, hey, well, I'm the best talker in the biz, and Don's like, yeah, you are, and I'm like, I think Don's actually a better.
Don is a better talker. That's why Don's gonna. That's why they're gonna bring Don on probably full time to be Kenny's manager.
Kenny's not bad, but Don's better.
Hey, Kenny's never had. He's not bad, but he's never had like a reputation as being one of the great talkers. He's like great in the ring, and he can talk well enough to to get things going. But like they put him with Don because Don is much better, and they're clearly moving towards Don. I mean, he's basically in AEW full time, but being there full time. It's behind the scenes. He's basically already his contract. At his decision to be an executive vice president of Impact, he didn't renew it. So he's basically let them know he's leaving. He's left the booking staff, and they're starting to move in that direction storyline, because on top obviously of what was happening on Dynamite this Saturday, the day after, although I believe they actually taped it several weeks ago, so it wasn't like the day after. It was the Against All Odds Impact pay-per-view, where Kenny Omega defended the Impact, the TNA and Impact World Championships against Moose, who became the #1 contender at the last pay-per-view. And they actually did have a really nice game. They did it in Daly's place, so like the entire rest of the pay-per-view.
Was there a crowd?
There was a crowd of wrestlers. So there was a crowd there. And it's the first time, right? Because the Impact pay-per-views have been in the Impact studio, and it's been empty arena. I mean, it's had piped in. It's not been silent. They've had piped in noise, like cheering and stuff. So if you're watching on TV, it's at least not silent, except that you're aware that you are hearing people cheering and chanting, even though there is obviously no one in the building. So you kind of have to get over that to get into it. Although that is still better than it being completely silent. But they've been basically doing an empty arena for Impact. And storyline wise, they decided to have Tony Khan went to Impact and announced that in order to keep both the Good Brothers and Sami Callihan from interfering in the match, they were going to do the Impact Championship match at Daly's place in Jacksonville, several hundred miles away from Memphis or Nashville, wherever in Tennessee it is that Impact tapes.
Nashville, I think.
I think you're. I think it is Nashville, so that no one can interfere. So they had Kenny Omega versus Moose at Daly's place. Sami Callihan actually went on the very first match of the pay-per-view, of a 3-hour pay-per-view in Nashville. And then the very last was obviously the main event of Kenny Omega versus Moose, which was Omega just barely. There were a couple of really great spots. Moose, I think he just signed an extension with Impact, which is good for him, but I'd like to see him in a bigger promotion, because he has really come into his own. He could easily be the top guy there, and good, he should be, but I could see him being the top guy at WWE. He's not going to get a chance to be a top guy at AEW, so I get that, but he could be like easily a main event guy. His promos are getting better. His in-ring work and stuff is great. Like when you see a guy as tall as Moose, who's like 6'6" or 6'7", do a Spanish fly off the top rope, that is insane.
Moose are big animals. So
yeah, he's a big guy. And he had a great match. There's one spot where Kenny is trying to give him a headlock and bring him down the ground, and Moose just stands up with all 220 pounds of Kenny Omega hanging off of his neck like it was a necklace. It's fantastic. And he's just muscling around all over the place until the very end, because they may have been in Daly's place to keep any of the Impact guys from interfering, but they put them back right smack dab in the Elite's backyard. And the Young Bucks came running out at the very end. They're
Don shenanigans or what?
Yeah, their first. Well, Don and Tony Schiavone and Don Callis and Scott D'Amore, the other Impact EVP, called the match live from Daly's place, and they did have a nice arena. They had a bunch of AEW wrestlers around the ring, so that you actually had some kind of live human reaction during a championship match, which was really good. But the Young Bucks came running out at the end to interfere. The first time the Young Bucks had been in a TNA ring in something like 12 years. And they came running out to super kick and BTE trigger Moose while the referee was down, and then skedaddled in time for Kenny to get the victory after a healthy helping of shenanigans, as has been happening.
And, usually I kind of hate shenanigans, but I don't mind when Don's the one doing the shenanigans.
And well, in this case, he stayed up until the very, very end. He stayed at the announcer position and just acted like, well, what are you going to do? Moose brought this on himself because he's a terrible human being, and just like terrible, typical Don being the worst, most hateful person on earth kind of stuff. And it also worked because all of the other Impact, we talk about this a lot, all the other matches in pay-per-view were straightforward with straightforward finishes. So it wasn't like a night full of shenanigans. I wish it wasn't in the main event, but I get it and I live with it. And then more importantly, at the very, very end, after Kenny does all of that, Sami Callihan, who apparently jumped onto a plane or a private helicopter immediately after his match finished, managed to get himself from Nashville to Jacksonville, ran out and began attacking Kenny Omega with a bat. And it appears that we are building towards Kenny Omega versus Sami Callihan for the Impact Championship as the main event of Slammiversary next month. But Don Callis did not like, it's all well and good if the Young Bucks come and interfere in an Impact match, but Sami Callihan interfering, that is a bridge too far. He didn't like that, so he stomped down to the ring and he fired Sami Callihan from Impact on the spot. Told him he did not want to see him in Impact anymore. And the other EVP was like, whoa, you can't do that. And they went off the air with some arguing. And apparently some executives from the head honchos from Anthem, the company that owns Impact and AXS, are going to be on Impact this week to have a tete-a-tete with Scott D'Amore and Don Callis about his actions, whether Sami Callihan's really fired, and what's been going on there. So it reads like they're starting the storyline that's going to see Don leaving Impact for good and being, he's basically permanently full-time on AEW now, but really
which for the fans that regularly watch Dynamite, it won't be like anything happened. Really.
Yeah, it'll be just like, he's here all the time. So what are you talking about? It's the same. Yeah. But it'll be interesting.
So you were talking about the women's matches. Also, I guess before that, Lance Archer built up, had another squash. Yes. There's not too much to say that, other than what we said already. That they're building him back up.
Basically, black out of the guy. Right, this guy who's like, I can't remember his name, was like Chance something or other, but he was well. The only reason it stuck out to me, he's totally out there, is that he's on. We'll talk about the next episode. He was on the next week's Elevation, getting murdered by Wardlow, where he got stuck up on top of. No, I think he got choked out. But I'm like, man, you're getting blackout. You're out here getting killed by Lance Archer, and you're out here getting killed by Wardlow. That's the wrestling business. But Lance Archer is building him back.
Body slammed by Hobbs 10 times in a row, so that's something. There's always a bar, right? So.
There's a bar. You're not quite on that bottom level. But
and then winning and challenge Orange Cassidy, which I'm like, okay,
that's an interesting program.
Orange Cassidy's going to have to beat somebody up again, so there we go.
They need something. He's someone who's popular enough. He's got to stay on TV, so they have some move. They want to build up, but they want to build him up, and it gives the best friend something to do, because it's one of those things that I don't see it as a disconnect, but I have heard viewers see it where Tony Khan has a different view of best friends than Tony Khan and has said publicly he views the best friends as a main event act and a top of the card tag team that up there with probably not quite at Young Bucks level, but certainly up there with Proud and Powerful and some of the other tag teams.
He's huge fans of them. Yeah.
You should not be surprised to regularly see them on TV and regularly have some.
I like them all
match on pay-per-views. But a lot of people are like, no, they're comedy goose. Why are you giving these comedy goose so much airtime? So for some people, there's like a real.
Or you hate laughing. Jeez,
I
found
know,
the humor
but
in your life.
I love the best friends. I really like putting Statlander with the best friends. It's good for her. It's good for them. And but that's like, especially when we were just talking about how much they leave the weirdness on YouTube, and you don't see acts like the Wingmen on Dynamite. And now we're going to get the Wingmen versus the best friends. And I don't know if the internet wrestling community is ready for that much goofiness all in one. But especially when you're over the and they're doing, green guy versus comedy guy, and big guy versus little guy, because it's Orange Cassidy versus Cesar Bononi, and is the match they're building to, which I'm interested in. But that should be interesting. And they've been building that up on Dark, and Cesar is pulling out his comedy styling. So
Wingmen are on Dark and Elevation like a lot,
and getting a lot of promo time, and being the lead a lot as well. So they get.
Well, I mean,
if you watch everything,
they're matches at this point. So
yeah. Well, if you watch everything, they're getting very well defined. And if you only watch Dynamite, you're like, who are these goofs? So
yeah, exactly.
Which is why.
And then so I guess the main event was the Machine, Brian Cage. Who is he fighting?
It was. This is something that's been a long. What was it? It's all about. Wasn't it a tag match against Adam Page and 10? It was Adam Page and 10 versus Brian Cage and Will Hobbs. And Will Hobbs. And and this was something that.
And the reason I even forgot who they're fighting, because really it wasn't about who they were fighting.
Because it wasn't really about. I mean, the match was good, and some big things happened in it. So obviously we continue the Adam Page Dark Order storyline, and we got to have a nice victory. The TV show goes off the air. The good guys have won, and they're all in the ring sharing a beer together, which is great. 10,
especially after Uno lost to Miro, right?
Especially after Uno lost to Miro, yeah. So you balance that out, which makes a lot of sense. And it makes more sense why this was the main event and not the Miro match, which would have had a totally different feel. And Preston Vance and 10 got the pin, so you can see like they have been slowly, subtly doing stuff with him. He's been getting a lot more matches on Dark. He's been having the occasional match on Dynamite. He is someone that you can see them going like, we think he could be a big company star. So, he needs more seasoning. We want him to do stuff, but we don't want him to be the guy who takes a pin a lot or who's just there in the group of the guys.
Yeah, he's slightly more than a goon right now, which is good. Yeah. Before he was just straight up goon.
Yeah, so he was just there as muscle.
Now, especially about some segment, he talks a little bit more and everything. I mean, and I hate that because the circumstances surrounding this, of course, sucked, but after Brody passed, with -1 taking on that, 10 was his favorite wrestler and everything. I think that also helped 10's career a little bit.
Put him
on TV more. I mean, that's really.
Well, put him in that big main event match on the Brody tribute show, which I think put him. This is the first time a lot of people saw him a lot, and and then and then since then he's been on TV more, and also I think. John Silver hasn't been up there, who was the next most over person in Dark Order, but now he's been off of TV. Well, no, I mean after like Mr. Brody, but he hasn't been able to be on TV, so now he needs someone from Dark Order to be around and doing stuff in matches. And 10 is they're not. It's not going to be Colt Cabana. It's not going to be 5 and Evil Uno and Stu Grayson. They're really keeping in the tag scene, which makes sense. So you need somebody, and it's giving him a lot of space, and he's taking it. But you had a really good match. But obviously, the big story of the match was the long, slow burn between Brian Cage and the rest of Team Taz, coming in and coming off of, and we're still 2 weeks later, we're still paying off stuff from Double or Nothing, which had a lot of storyline build to it. But once again, Ricky Starks comes out to try to get Brian Cage to cheat to win the match, which they're on the verge of winning. Brian Cage won't do it, so Ricky Starks just hauls up and
slap the fuck out of him.
I mean,
that shit was loud.
Yeah, you can hear it.
A loud slap.
I don't know how dialed in their microphones were, but it hurt it. And then you could see immediately on his face, because Ricky Starks has one of the best faces in AEW, the best reaction faces in AEW. He immediately goes, "Oh fuck, what did I do?" And he goes running, and Brian Cage goes charging after him. And
so that's the button. That's the button. Like, because I felt like with Double or Nothing, they halfway were pushing the button, and then now they just finally push the button all the way down. Yeah. It's a split, right?
Yeah,
like,
well, you can tell because like
reconciliation or anything next week.
No, like Taz is on commentary the entire match, and he's going, "Yes, Ricky, you are totally justified in slapping him. There's no justification for Brian Cage doing what he did. So you can see he's taking Ricky's side. They're going to push Brian out, and I'm hoping this leads to a Brian Cage versus Will Hobbs match. I'm assuming it is because he can't wrestle Ricky Starks. So we'll see what happens.
Exactly.
It's like Brian Cage.
Yeah, okay.
It seems like Ricky Starks.
Who wants to see Brian
Cage
Cage
on some? Yeah. But I'm sure he'll get in there somewhere and interfere somewhere. Yeah. But it was great.
And plus, I like everybody in Team Taz.
And it kept Hobbs.
I like a lot.
Yeah.
So I like that they have a program with each other.
Yeah. Gives them something to do and not just tied, especially without being able to do the Christian Cage stuff. And they're always doing multiple different things anyway. And it even kept Hobbs strong because he wasn't, he didn't just lose. He had to get overwhelmed in a handicap match where it was 2-on-1 against two giant guys.
He needs to do the 10 body slam things like a lot though. I mean, like you said, they'll do it all the time, but like on Dynamite, do it once in a while.
They need him to let him come on Dynamite and do that. He just needs to do it once on Dynamite and he will be so over. People won't be able to get enough of it.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the thing I liked about the show is that there were some things that make me want to watch what happens next week.
Yeah.
Like does Darby get the shit beat out of him next week? Like, wow, I want to see that. Or what's the payoff with the split? Like, what is Cage saying retaliation? What's it yet another promo between Inner Circle and Pinnacle? That type of thing. I'm not actually
Who is Miro going to murder?
Or who's
I want to know.
That's another thing. So I guess we just established that a TNT title is basically an open challenge title, right?
Everybody's done it that way, which I think is they've basically followed the tradition that Cody sent, and I think it's good because it separates it from the world title. You don't just have two different titles that people are having to build to anybody can get a TNT title shot anytime, and you can see some weird matches you ordinarily wouldn't see. I mean,
and
God knows,
Miro being
if I had to do if I had to do my prediction at the beginning of the year, like at some point this year, I'm going to see Miro versus Evil Uno. No, I would never have guessed that in a million years, but we did.
Right. Yeah, and that's why it's not even that fun to speculate who Miro's supposed to be up against next, right? Because you just it doesn't matter who's up next. It's just he's going to destroy them. That's it.
Like the big guys that are good main event stuff, they'll save for pay-per-views, which is what they should do. And then, otherwise, guys from the mid-card get to have some TV time, and you get to have a great match watching Miro murder someone from the mid-card.
I still wonder what a Miro Brian Cage match would look like. And I just in my head, I keep playing that over and over again. What that would be like. Even though that's not on the cards at all for anything right now, but because they're so big and so athletic for their size, is what I'm saying.
Well, it makes
that's a lot of flying around the ring.
It feels like it probably wouldn't be too much different from the Miro Lance Archer match because he's also big and athletic and flies around.
Yeah, except I would think that Lance isn't, I don't think, as good.
He does a moonsault off of the top rope.
And I'm not saying he's bad, but I'm just saying I think those two I like them better.
After rope walking. He's a 6'7" guy who rope walks the top rope.
Also, the rope walk takes a long time to execute, and that kind of ruins the whole magic of it when it takes 10 minutes to actually get up on the rope.
It depends on who does it.
But when you finally get it off, then of course it's impressive.
It's
the
really
impressive moves. I'm saying I like watching Miro and Brian Cage more than I like watching Lance Archer.
It's possible. It's possible. I think that they would have a good match. I think there'd be much good stuff. I've seen some guys do rope walk stuff, but you got to be able, like El Fantasma does it great, but he's really very fast and very graceful. So versus, Lance Archer has to take his time with it, but that's okay. Not everybody's gonna be able to.
And I can't wait to see Andrade in the ring. I mean, especially after I've been beating off his highlights.
I'm really looking forward to that.
It's like I want to see that guy wrestle.
I'm really looking
forward. I think there's a couple of things to look forward to for AEW right now. So with these storylines right now.
Yep. And I know they've announced some things for this week, but the only one that I can actually think of off the top of my head is the Jake Hagar Wardlow one, because it's the one they keep talking about. And it's kind of like the main event for this week.
Is the handicaps next week too, right?
That's right. The handicap matches this week. That's right. So we got both of those. I think they've announced a couple of others. I just can't think of what they are off the top of my. Oh, it's a 4-man, because we forgot to mention Frankie Kazarian came out as the Elite Hunter. Also, no, we mentioned
that.
So
we mentioned that, but
right.
I didn't mention it.
And now he's got
4-man setup.
No, yeah. So it's going to be an 8-man tag. So now it's going to be Death Triangle and Eddie Kingston and Frankie Kazarian against the Good Brothers and the Young Bucks. So that's going to be happening this week. So that should be fun.
Okay, that could be good.
Yeah, because the Good Brothers came out at the end to attack at the end of the match, and then Frankie Kazarian came out sporting a beard now, which looks kind of weird. And yeah,
Doc Gallows tie-dye shirt looks so weird on him. Like, does he like to not wear biker gear for once, just wear a tie-dye shirt? I was like, did you just grab like Dude Loves shirt out of the back? Like, what happened?
I think so. I just grabbed whatever he had, he had handy. He's a goofy, weird guy. I never listened to Talk of Shopomania or watch any of the Talk of Shopomania, but I hear enough things about it. I'm like, okay. You know, when
he's goofy as fuck on BTE. I mean,
yeah.
Well, by goofy, I mean he's a lot of dick jokes, but yeah, that's goofy.
Well, the guy whose original wrestling name was Sex Ferguson, he hasn't changed much since those days.
So there you go. Or the fake Kane.
Or the fake Kane.
That was a story.
Not all of those were his ideas.
I'm like, if you're gonna have fake people who like Sting, have Sting postures, because the Sting posture thing I thought was hilarious. So I think Sting should have more Sting postures in his matches.
You know what? Well, apparently he did that on WCW a lot, but you know what? Doing that on that nice little callback at Double or Nothing, I thought that was great. And when he no sells the punch, I just laughed and laughed and laughed. All right, so another good episode of Dynamite. I know some people haven't been paying attention to the Friday stuff because it's Friday night and they're watching the NBA playoffs, and I get that. But my Rockets aren't in the playoffs,
left, so that's good.
That's true. Well, the Rockets aren't in it, so I don't care. So I'm just going to keep watching my.
Chris Paul is almost there. Which remember the guy we basically threw away for Russell Westbrook. So yeah.
Well, apparently now he's out indefinitely, so he's pulling a Chris Paul again.
But if the Clippers series goes to 7 games, then
he'll be through his quarantine. He can possibly come back.
He is a little snake bit, it seems, during these playoffs.
It does definitely seem that way. So whatever.
Well, it just sucked that the first time you snake bit like this, I was at that fucking game. But yeah,
I know. I was right next to you. We were celebrating without realizing we had just the rest of it got thrown away. Yeah, but that's a podcast for another time.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So another good episode. A lot of stuff to look forward to next week, and AEW just keeps packing them in. So it looks like a good. And I'm now counting down. I believe we're now down 6 weeks until AEW is live in Houston, and I can't wait. We might have to see if we can do a podcast, a reaction podcast right from the University of Houston Center right afterwards. And I don't know if I'll be able to contain myself.
Do you have any connections at that little like trailer, the KWC trailer or whatever? Or I don't know, do they haven't been on that campus in so long, but they used to have a decent radio set.
They have they still got like the radio stations there, but I don't know if anybody will be there at like 11 o'clock at night when the show ends.
Yeah. They'll also be like, who the fuck are you guys? Why are you here? And you're like, it's a wrestling podcast?
Hey, we can just record it. We can just I'll just bring my Tascam. We can just record it to tape and go up. If you're there with like the Doomsday guys, we can have them chip in as well.
I'm telling you, I'm still trying to get Dr. Britt Baker to maybe do a podcast if I can talk to her just in the right way at Comic Palooza when I'm in line to see her. But
all right,
that'll be good.
We'll see what happens. See who else from AEW shows up. Sammy's been doing a lot of conventions too, so see if he's there. Ask him too.
I think Chris Paul just messaged you.
Probably. You probably heard me talking shit about him. Well, too bad. Shouldn't have pulled your hamstring right before. Beat Golden State first and then pull your hamstring. God damn it. All right. All right. Well, we're getting off into basketball talk, and that's a totally different podcast. So this has been For All Elite Reviewing. I'm Josh Starnes.
And I'm Shamit Ghosh, and I like to party.
To the music.